It all began with an idea: to create a festival where women's voices are uplifted and celebrated. 200 cultural events, and 30 years later, the Sor Juana Festival lives on. From international theater premieres to renowned musical performances, this festival has showcased the incredible contributions of women across disciplines and the world. And because of you, our artists, attendees, and supporters, the festival continues to thrive. Join us in celebrating the 31st annual Sor Juana Festival. Here's to another year of honoring artists, writers, performers, thinkers, visionaries who continue to redefine narratives through impact. The Sor Juana Festival is a testament to what happens when women lead, create, and inspire. Let's keep making history together. Vamos!
grow up not only with my parents but also my grandparents, and I spent a lot of time raised by the television set, so I watched a lot of movies and TV growing up. I was fortunate enough to study English at UCLA, but then also had a minor in filmmaking, and then I just graduated from USC this past May with my MFA in film and TV production. And I'm always so inspired by the border community that I grew up from in El Centro, and I love making movies about and for Latinos, and the work that we just saw was a sizzle reel for a feature documentary about the Mendez et al. Versus Westminster et al. Case, and I'm so honored to be sharing it with you all today because this is a story that I think is deeply personal, and it's actually the first time that's been shared publicly, so that's exciting. And so thank you. And it's important that these stories are shared because 7 years before Brown versus Board of Education, there was Mendez et al. And I'm excited to be producing and helping bring these stories to life because they're so important. And again, it's an honor to have shared that with you all today. So thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm really grateful to see you all here in this room today. My name is Yanely Nelly Castellanos, and as mentioned, I'm currently a junior studying at Columbia College Chicago. I guess my first introduction to film, I actually started off with a drawing and painting background. I initially thought that's what I wanted to go to school for, what I wanted to pursue, and that's still a part of being just ever since I was little, just being creative has always been a part of me. But then during my sophomore year of high school, I took a short film production class with some friends, and I had discovered a passion that I had never had before. Then I made some short films during the pandemic, submitted one to the Walgreens Expressions Challenge, won the People's Champs Award, and when I got that, that was the first time that I realized I could actually pursue this as a career. And since then, I've just been really trying to push representation of marginalized communities in my work and also outside, as I'm currently involved with 2 nonprofits. The short film that you watched, Daydreamers, I made with my little sisters. I believe they're watching from home at this very moment, and this summer I will be making another short film with them. So I'm very happy to be here, very excited to see you all. Thank you.
So I think as you can understand, there are very different Latino experiences up here. And I was wondering if we could chat a little bit more about what Latino means to you, because I think part of this panel of course, but it also has to do with, we were chatting about this just before, society kind of tends to put us in small boxes, and I'm from Mexico, I live there, I have been working here or coming to try to put some projects up here, and the experience I've had, it's very intense in both good and bad ways, but it's really hard to understand how, at least here, and on my totally personal experience, it's Latinos, we are all put in one box. It doesn't matter if you're Colombian or Mexican or Venezuelan, Brazilian, completely different language, but we're all put in the same box. So I would like for you guys to kind of talk a little bit more of how you feel about this, how you feel being a Latino filmmaker in the US, and does that put you, or do you feel that puts you into a particular path?
Yeah, for me, I mean, I studied in the US, in Los Angeles, but before that I lived most of my life in Mexico. But when I arrived to the US is when I realized I was a Latina. Before it wasn't in the conversation. I was just, a human being. But then I arrived and I was oh, okay, I am Latina. They are it started being in my mind oh, wow. And I think unconsciously I started building or trapping myself inside that box, I would say. In terms of trying to accommodate the story, someone wanted to hear about Latinidad, or someone wanted to here, and it was like this pressure to, you know, tell your Latino story, not your Sofía story, your experience as a Latino. And I think slowly by slowly I've been trying to break that internal box in myself and trying to find stories that really speak to me as who I am in all senses, whether it's a woman, whether it's Mexican, whether it's you know, all the aspects that make me who I am instead of a specific thing. And with that as well, I should say, like, also being Latino, like on the other side of that, I've also found like a very close community in Los Angeles of Latinos. And so I'm trying to find that balance between, you know, building a Latino community, but also, you know, not limiting myself to that, like really being just a filmmaker, period, but with the help of a comunidad, which is so important, especially if living outside of one's home, you know, living away from family. It's important to find that community. So yeah, it's finding that balance, I would say.
I just want to highlight that Sofía and I actually knew each other before the panel today because we were both a part of the Me Too and Walmart filmmaker mentorship program. And I just want to echo your sentiments regarding the community that we have in Los Angeles, particularly the Latino filmmaking community. And I'm really honored to not only be a part of it, but I'm so glad that we found each other through that as well. I want to speak to the experiences of being a Latino filmmaker, but also being a Latino, which I think we talked about it upstairs as well, which is that so often we're faced with the dilemma of, are we too little Latino or too much Latino? And certainly like those questions come up when, depending on like what room you're in, whether it's for like you're meeting with the financier, or you're meeting with a fellow producer, right? You're always like, but it also is like so prevalent in like other spaces as well that goes beyond filmmaking. And again, like kind of going back to Sofía's point, I think it's so important to lean on those communities while also broadening your horizons to just so that we can make our mark, not only in just the Latino space, but also in other spaces as well.
Yeah, I'm pretty much going to be echoing off of what they said. First and foremost, just like on my, you know, being Latino, I am what you would call a no sabo kid. Sorry. I am slowly but surely learning since I live with my grandma. And, you know, with that language barrier, there is always that constant like question, like, am I Mexican enough? Am I, because, you know, when you're Latino in a space where, you know, there aren't many other Latinos, it's like, okay, I obviously do not fit in here. But then when you're not what Latinos expect you to be, there's also that disconnect of feeling like, oh, like, where do I belong, right? But despite like the language barrier, like I'm still Mexican. I'm, at the end of the day, I'm still Latino, and I know where my community is as I'm currently with you all today. And that is why I became like a Latino filmmaker specifically, because even though, and this is something that we mentioned, like even though the progress in representation is, you know, we have noticed it, it is not enough. It is not significant enough. And that is why I became a filmmaker, to push authentic representation, not only in front of the camera, but behind it, which is why I'm collaborating, as I mentioned, with filmmakers on campus as well as outside it, and giving back to my community, because you like supporting my community that has always supported me, like you can never go wrong with that. And I feel like, especially as Latinos, that is what makes us stronger, is by like regardless of if you're Mexican, Guatemalan, like we are Latino at the end of the day, and I would never change that.
So I will just take something that you were talking about, like representation, and that takes us to like the other part of this panel, which is like Latino female filmmakers. So in that regard, because you get the box of Latino, you get the box of female filmmaker, which men don't get. You don't have panels with them talking about men filmmaking. But still, I mean, I've started my career 20 years something ago, and well, a little bit less. But anyway, at that point, or when I was studying 20 something years ago, I told you this, just before. When I was studying in Mexico, I could count with my fingers, 10, the amount of female directors in Mexico, in active. A little bit less than 20 years from that point, we're more than 100. Between fiction and animation and short and documentary, but we're more than 100. So that is a huge step, but it's not enough. Like still the representation is very minor, and that makes this kind of conversations really important. So we need to keep on talking about who we are and how we see the world. So in that sense, like, what do you guys feel when we speak about like the female gaze in filmmaking, which I always have a trouble with? Like, what is the female gaze? Like, you just saw 3 different exercises, 3 different works from three different filmmakers. They have nothing to do with each other, and yes, in a way, but it's like if you get to TV, they would be like, okay, so let's hire a female director, because it doesn't matter, you just have to check the box. And it's like, okay, so we're done with representation. We have a female director. It doesn't matter how she shoots or the narrative that she chooses. So how do you guys feel about this today?
Yes, it's very interesting. In my case, you know, I've benefited a lot from those specific programs that are, you know, made for Latino filmmakers or women filmmakers. And so I find it very important because those are the ones that open doors, because this industry is just, you know, a room full of closed doors. And every step of that ladder is, you know, knocking on those doors and hoping they open up. And so, yes, it's interesting to navigate, because it's a lot of like self-reflection and knowing who you are, and knowing like, you know, what you're transmitting to other people in terms of your identity, or who you are as a filmmaker. So yeah, like moving forward, it's you know, the dream is that those types of programs don't exist at all, but we are still at the point where we need to highlight those voices, and we need to give a space for those voices to be heard, because they specifically not in that way have been heard before. And then I think the purpose of all of those programs is for people to realize that at the end of the day, it's just human stories. Like whenever I show the short film, my short film was the one of the cow, Nasabi. A lot of people come up to me from all parts of the world and have a like connection with the story, or maybe in their country, like something similar happened. And so putting those voices out there help us break that gap between you and me. And it's okay, we're all human stories, and everybody can connect. Even if the person is a main character, the main character is not your own race or your own gender, you can still connect with it, because it's the emotion that's important. So I think, yeah, that's the importance. I don't know if I answered the question, but those are my thoughts regarding that.
I just want to say that, to Sophia's point, I think it's so important that we continue to have programs like the Mito and Walmart Filmmaker Mentorship Program, La Leaf, Imaginad, which is a collaboration between Disney and the National Association of Latino Independent Producers. We need those programs right now more than ever, because just like you said, this is an industry full of closed doors, and we need to have as many doors open for us to come in and make our marks and kick ass, and, you know, show people what we're made of. I get, when I do different generals, different meetings, I'm often told, you know, like, we're doing well with Latino representation. We're not quite there yet, but we're slowly making moves. And I sort of resent that, and I dismiss that completely, because I think we're nowhere near where we need to be. Latinos show up to movies all the time. They're constantly, you know, going to see Marvel films, and they're putting their money, you know, out there. They're going to the movie theaters, they're buying popcorn, they're doing the whole thing, and yet we do not see ourselves represented enough, and that is a problem. And that's why these programs need to continue happening, so that we can direct those next movies or produce those next films and ensure that we are seeing people that look like us on the screen, period.
Yeah, I 100% agree. So I do go by like they them pronouns, and like I don't always present this way, but like similar to like what you said, like Sophia, it's like by being like a woman or like being like in like female spaces, I have like benefited from like those like programs. And you know, it is unfortunate when you think about it, because it's like these programs exist because we're not seeing that representation. But you know, it, like you said, like more now than ever, they're really needed because they really highlight our voices. And you know, I think by having those programs, it's like you're getting the most authenticity from it, because it's like, okay, like these group of people are Latinos, like they know Latino stories because they're Latino. And I think it's also about like when you're a female filmmaker, it's like people expect you to make what they think female filmmakers should make. And so I think it's really important that we have those programs and that we have these conversations and that we amplify each other's voices, because there's not one way to be a female filmmaker. There's not one way to make films. So not only are we like amplifying our stories, but we're also rewriting it, and I think that also pushes our progress.
And if I could add something to that as well, it's you know, even the programs are sometimes related to women filmmakers or Latino filmmakers. Mm-hmm. Another thing that is helped a lot is that it empowers when they give us those budgets and that money to create. It also breaks the gap between, you know, people that have maybe a bit more of freedom economically versus people that are like struggling to make art. And so when I received that fund, it gave me that financial freedom to create the vision that I wanted to create. Mm-hmm. And I think that's another, you know, big privilege to have, because sometimes when, you know, worrying about how are you going to pay the rent, or worrying about things that a lot of people may not even have to think about, it allows you to, even if it's just for some time, like allowing yourself to be creative in that way.
No, for sure. And I think these funds, these conversations, this, like scholarships or whatever, this is what has gotten, going back to the Mexican example, from 10 filmmakers to 100 in less than 20 years. That's what keeps moving the conversation forward. Sadly, or at least that's how I feel, not as fast as we would want it to be, but given the times that we're experiencing, as I completely agree with what you all said, they're more important than ever. And hopefully we'll get to a time where this is not part of the conversation anymore. Like the boxes are out and we understand community and we understand art as a form of human expression, regardless of if it's a she, a him, or a they. It's just a human narrative way of expressing ourselves. And in that matter, I would, what do you guys imagine, like on the best possible scenario, what would be that best possible scenario for you to still create as filmmakers on the near future?
I feel, so I'll give you an example. I mentioned one of the programs earlier. It's Imaginar, which is Nelly and Disney. That's a program, the application is closed last month, I believe. And what's really great about what that program is doing in particular is that they're giving money to aspiring or, you know, even just like working producers, $50,000 just to be able to work on the iteration of these projects, not funding for the project specifically, but to be able to like pay the rent as they're trying to develop and, you know, email people, get things going. And I think that right now, the way that Hollywood works, it's not financially sustainable to be able to develop projects, right? You have to land the money for the project itself, and then you're off to the races. But there's never like that, it's never financially sustainable to be able to like be in the middle of projects. And I think that there needs to be a roadmap to where creatives are being able to be paid, or at least able to pay the rent as they're in the middle of getting things going, as opposed to like the 6-month, 2-year waiting period where you're waiting for financing to come through. And I think that is truly the key, is financial sustainability, in order to allow creatives to focus on exactly that, the creative.
Yes, exactly. I was going back to your point of like being able to sustain your life. I was hearing, I think the director of The Brutalist, which just won an Oscar, I think I don't know the exact fact, but I think they said he was still broke after winning this amazing movie. And so I think that tells us a lot about our mistakes in terms of the film industry. Like if an artist to that level, like the Oscars being the maximum considered level of success in whatever you consider success, it tells us there's something wrong with the way we're treating artists. Like we're not giving them the right, we're not valuing them enough, it seems. And even though, you know, we're not literally saving lives, art is still creating lives, and it's still a reflection of who we are as a society. And I think it's about democratizing art, and also valuing the work of an artist. And I think personally, like the way I found to you know, break those barriers, or try to find my own equality, or try to raise my voice a little bit more, is through social media, actually, because I found that a good way of like artists being a bit more democratic, because now I have this platform where I'm able to show my art without any limitation or anybody's permission. So I think in these times, as you said, very dark times, uncertain times, we have to find ways where it works for us personally to keep creating, and pushing through those difficult moments, and still remembering that you know, through our art, through the art that we do, we'll be able to answer those questions, and we'll be able to, you know, keep together. And yeah, yes.
I almost don't know what to add on to, because you guys just always take the words right out of my mouth. But yeah, no, I agree. Again, I think with being like a current student, and the way that like the industry is as a whole, it's like there's this like choice of like, do I make a film that's palatable for funding, or do I sacrifice my own creative, you know, or do I like focus on having my creative satisfaction while sacrificing the opportunity to make money or be successful and like make a Hollywood movie. And so like definitely like if we were presented with more like financial opportunities, being able to sustain ourselves, not only sustaining our creative ideas, but also, you know, being able to feed ourselves and take care of ourselves, and, you know, be able to pay the rent, I feel like that would be, you know, very important. I feel like that's definitely something that we should be providing to artists, because art is valuable. It is powerful. You know, it is part of our culture, our civilization. Art is political, and it is powerful. Like, even if, you know, you don't necessarily create it with the intention of, oh, I'm gonna change lives, it can make an impact on somebody. So I definitely hope to see, you know, more value for artists, and artists being paid for their work, because art is work, and our art is power.
Yeah, in a way, I think it speaks about dignifying our work as creators. I don't know how it works here, but just so you have an idea, in Mexico, we don't have, as a filmmaker, we don't have social security. We don't have, how do I say, when you retire and you get a pension, that doesn't happen over there for artists, at least. So it's hard. Like you don't have health insurance, and you have to pay for everything yourself, and it's hard. So it has to do with dignifying our craft for sure. And I mean, I hear you guys, and I kind of feel honored to be next to right aside to the next generation of gatekeepers, because that's how I feel our female filmmaker series. I'm sorry, I'm so much smarter in Spanish. But see, like ourselves as female filmmakers, like I know that I have been working for a while. Probably the biggest gratifications I have gotten in life, in the professional life, is when someone comes and says, I saw your work, it changed me, or it moved me, or it opened up questions, or whatever. And that is radical. That's like, it changes you and it keeps you going, it's fuel. And it also makes me want to keep the gates open for the ones that are coming. And it's really exciting to understand that this generation is here. And you guys have a tough work ahead of you, because, again, uncertain dark times are here. And in that sense, I think, like, yeah, how do we build bridges towards others? Not only as females, as Latinos, but like as humans. How do we keep on building bridges towards humanity?
Yeah, I can definitely answer that. I feel like the first thing is like you said, is like we are humans at the end of the day. Like it's, you know, to build bridges, it's like first you build it with like other like female filmmakers or other creatives or other Latinos. But then I think overall to like expand that impact, you have to also connect with people outside of, you know, you need to step out of your comfort zone, because at the end, the world is very diverse. You know, there's so many different people that exist in the world. And I feel like the first step into, you know, expanding the sense of humanity is by recognizing each other as humans. That's what we are, you know. We all have like a purpose. We all want to, you know, make something of ourselves. And again, like just going back to it, like by working together as a community, not letting our appearances, our gender, or, you know, etc. separate us, that, you know, we have much more in common than we think we do. So it's always about taking that step forward to initiate a bond with someone, even if they're different from you, and recognizing them as a human first.
Yes, I agree with that. And I also want to take it back to your point that you said of, you know, bringing opportunities to the next generation. Because when we talk about, or when I talk about, when I said doors being open, those doors are often open because someone from the inside was like able to give us their time or their effort to like open it up for us. And so that means like when we start getting, hopefully we start growing even more and more, we have to reciprocate that and even, you know, double it to the next person. Because, you know, I'm not that far into my career. I still have yet a lot to go, but from where I am, I've received help from a lot of people, like, and I also been trying to help whoever is you know, a step behind me, help them, you know, if they have any questions or any contact, like really trying to give those resources or open those doors to whoever is coming before, and building those open doors, because that's how we get up there. And also, you know, those people that are inside those you know, production companies or those executives, we need allies inside those rooms. And I think the more we grow, hopefully there'll be more of those allies, more of those Latinos inside those rooms making the decision. and that way, little by little, there's more doors being open.
A truly life-changing experience for me came about in 2022 when I worked as a director's assistant on Star Wars Skeleton Crew, and I got to assist 7 directors at the same time, which sounds just as crazy as I'm saying it, which is 7 directors all at the same time. And that experience came about because so-and-so knew so-and-so, knew so-and-so, knew so-and-so who worked as a production supervisor on that show. And I'll like never forget the fact that like it took like 6 people to even like be able to get an interview for that job. And so I always think about that. It's like, you know, how can I bridge the gap so that, you know, instead of like knowing so-and-so, knowing so-and-so, knowing so-and-so who works at Warner Brothers, it's like, how can I, you know, slowly bridge it so that I can go directly to the people at Warner Brothers, not just to be able to like have those generals and those one-on-ones, but also like, how can I help open doors for other people so that they don't have to go through these like giant maze of doors to like get to somebody. And so I think it goes both ways, right? If it takes a lot of people for me to be able to meet somebody, but you know, how I also need to make myself accessible to like other people as well, so that if they want to grab coffee, like they also don't need to go through mazes. Like they can just reach out to me directly as well. So I think that mentorship is so important, but just as much as it's important for us to be giving back as well.
Yeah, as I hear you, I think back on my career, and I definitely see that every time I have had a big break, it's been a female on the upper level saying, yeah, come in. Like every time. And actually there are like researchers and statistics that say that if you have female on top empowering spots, then you'll have more female working on those environments, like in every case, like film, but in, I don't know, medicine, or like every spot, that's the case. Like you can go online and research it, and you'll have that information. So thank you for this, because I think that's the only way we can keep pushing for a conversation where this stops being part of the conversation. I don't know if we have still more time, or if we want to do some questions, or we just keep going.
Because we can keep going on forever.
We just talked for 2 hours up there, so we can just keep on.
Yeah, we can go on for a little bit, and then we can open up to the Q&A.
Okay. Anything else that you guys want to add? Like on a specific, like, what are you guys excited about? Like we talked, there are uncertain, dark times on our present, but I think it's always an act of resistance to also look on the bright side, and to have laugh and joy as an act of resistance. So with that in mind, what are you guys excited about as filmmakers?
I think for me, you know, I consider myself a very optimistic person. So with all of these dark times, for me, it's like a fire inside of me is starting up, because I know like it becomes a challenge for me. You know, it becomes like something to achieve, like another obstacle to achieve, and that makes me excited in a weird way. And I. You know, I know we're gonna make it through it as artists and as humans and as citizens. So it's just pushing through, and continuing with you know, being authentic to who you are as an artist, as a human, and just being kind in general. I think that is what will make us hopefully get through it.
Definitely being optimistic during these times, even though it can be hard, and sometimes, like, you know, definitely like the events happening in the world can test your patience and your frustration. I am really proud of this wonderful documentary that we're working on about Mendes et al. There's also another documentary that I'm producing that's in its last couple weeks of post-production about the activist Paulo Freire in Brazil, which I'm very excited as well to kind of see out there in the world. And I am producing a rom-com that will be shooting in New York this summer as well. So there's a lot of something that is personally very exciting to me now is that there are Latino projects getting greenlit. You know, even though yes, it's incredibly hard. There's all these gatekeepers. There is a market for them, you know, and it's very short and it's very small, but you know, anybody who's working on those projects, we just need to continue hustling. We need to continue kicking ass so that we can ensure that these projects are not only getting made and that they're getting fully financed, but that they're able to reach wide audiences so that we can continue ensuring that this market becomes only bigger.
Yeah, adding on to that, I'm really excited to just keep creating, to see all of us, you know, not only creating our own individual stories, but also interacting with them, supporting each other, seeing our community grow stronger, and building generational success. I think for us especially, that's very important. Yes, I'm just excited to collaborate with more people, meet new people, make new experiences, and just take in everything that life has to offer, because existing is resistance in itself. And being a female filmmaker or being a Latino and existing, especially given the current political climate, that is resistance. Loving each other is resistance. So yeah, I just look forward to seeing more creativity, seeing our voices being heard, and seeing more love.
You were gonna add something.
Yeah, just to add something, it also makes me excited having everybody of you here, because right now you're here supporting women, supporting filmmakers, supporting artists. And so I think that talks a lot about us making an effort behind the camera, but also making an effort as consumers of consuming content that we want to make, we want to see made in the future, and supporting those stories. You know, if we go to the theater and there's a Marvel movie and there's maybe a lesser known movie by a Mexican director, it's making those choices as well, and putting your money, your valuable money in stories that you think deserve it. That makes me very excited.
Yeah, and I think that comes also times are changing. For sure, when I started till this day, when I started, we were talking about this, platforms were not there. And film festivals were the only spot where you could get films shown that were not mainstream, basically American films. And that was super important to get into these A-list festivals, but the slots are minimal compared to the amount of filmmakers out there. But now there's this kind of democratization of how you put your work out there, which in a way is amazing, because I would have never, my most recent film, it's called Noise, and I would have never expected for a film which is completely based on the Mexican violent context that we're living. Its protagonist is a 70-year-old female. And it was for 2 weeks after it opened, it was the most watched non-English film on Netflix worldwide. And that would have been completely inconceivable for me 10 years ago. That was never going to be the case. So now we have this kind of opportunity. On the other side, people are not going to cinemas as much, which is the experience of community and being on a spot where you're laughing with strangers or crying with strangers or just having your complete attention into something. That's kind of the dark side of platforms. But anyway, looking on the bright side, what do you guys feel about this kind of democratization of being able to show or hopefully show your work on these platforms worldwide. Yeah, that.
I think, yes, as you say, there's advantages and disadvantages, and I think we've seen a lot of examples in streamers. The example you brought up, I can also think of, for example, Squid Games. You know, people stopped caring about reading subtitles because the story worked, and it grew like an audience that was incredibly large and universal. And so I think it's making people realize, and it's making people in those decision-making rooms realize like what we want as an audience. Because at the end of the day, what they're thinking is like it's money, and you know it's a business, so they have to think about money. And I think these examples that have happened recently have made them make a switch little by little of taking a bit more risk into stories. And I think there's still a lot of process to be made there. And also another place where I find that democratization is, you know, on platforms of social media, where what I like about it is that you also receive instant feedback. And so you're able to see how your audience is responding to your art, if your story, if your idea was made clear. And I think that's one of the things we have, an element that is new compared to other generations of filmmakers. It's like another aspect to take into consideration and see where it will, like how it will transform or evolutionize the path where filmmaking is going and where art is going. And there's another tool as well with AI, which is bringing us like making tools or making like things more accessible. And AI, we could get into a 2-hour conversation. It's a lot, but it's just about adapting to those things and using them as to our advantage. And that's the way we'll survive. You know, adapting and making the best out of them.
I definitely take the approach of audience first. So, you know, if audiences are going to streaming services and that is where a majority of them are watching content, then I think it's important for us as filmmakers to recognize that and to pursue those opportunities so that we can ensure, you know, especially for us being like Latino filmmakers, to ensure that there's eyeballs on our content and that Hollywood is even more willing to continue greenlighting projects of this nature. I think as well, it all comes down to story. You know, what are you doing in service of story? And to your point regarding, you know, whether it's like using social media to promote a film or using other forms of technology, it's also important that we keep story at the front and center of that, and that we use them to our advantage, and that we also use them to elevate opportunities so that, you know, we can make films that resonate with all types of audiences on all types of platforms.
Yes, I agree. I personally do not have like much experience with like attending like festivals, but I do rely on social media a lot to promote my work. And the cool thing about social media is you're also able, like you said, like highlighting opportunities and also making connections with other creatives who could then possibly, you could both end up working on a set together. Like I think building those connections really relies on like your target audience. You know, like the what I've learned is like the more like close and like specific your audience is, the more universal your story becomes. And I think when it comes to like festivals and distribution and stuff like that, I feel like young filmmakers especially are like intimidated because they're like, oh, I need to have the most expensive equipment, most nicest camera. And but like you were saying, like your story will, the quality of your story will always be, you know, better than the quality of your equipment. So by knowing like your target audience, the stories that you want to create, the type of person that you are deep down, like you will get that support. The opportunities will essentially come to you, you know, because you will have people who see your stories, who see you for you, and who will relate to you. And like I said, could possibly even want to collaborate with you.
Yeah, and I think that talks about also, in a way, like breaking the box that we were talking about, because the system loves to put us, like, as you were saying, female. Okay, so she should do romance. Like, I mean, it sounds like a joke, but it's still so much the way that the industry works, especially, at least on my experience with television. Like, yeah, it's like, no, she should be doing it, maybe comedy-ish, but it's like, I would have never been offered like action pieces. And it's like, but I can do them.
Yeah.
Really cool. And people, now I'll go back to something that we were talking about a little bit before, but it had to do with this also, and I would love for you guys to share with us if you have had some experiences like this. But again, I've been working for a couple of years now, and still, I was telling them, last show I did last year, it happens to me every time I got into a set for the first time or with a new crew, that they would ask, this time in this show, we came into this location. It was a lot of security because the cast was really well known, and there were like several security points we had to check. And finally we got to the parking lot, and it was packed, and there was just one space that was for the director's car. And the security guy kind of bent over into the car, looked at me, and he told the driver, no, you cannot park here. This is for the director. And the driver went like, well, yeah, but she's the director. And the guy went like again and looked at me, and he was like, nah. And this still happens till this day, even with social media and kind of being a little bit known in Mexico in a way. But this happens as a woman all the time, still. So just like, if you guys have any experience on something like that, or do you feel like being a female director, what's the obstacles you guys have?
I definitely have had a similar experience because I graduated in May from USC. A lot of graduate film students, or just undergraduate film students too as well, they go into the assistant pipeline, right? Like, you work as an assistant for a studio, and then that's kind of how you work your way up. And because I've like worked as an assistant in the past and as a trainee in the past, I was very fortunate post film school to go immediately into being able to produce, like, for a documentary house that I have like an immense amount of respect for. And definitely, like, in speaking to, you know, people about like, so how's post grad going, and telling them what I'm up to. Wait, really? That's what you're up to? Yes. Are you shocked? No, I'm not shocked. Because I worked for that, and I earned that. But yes, like, you're absolutely right. Like that. Thank you. I'm not shocked because it took work. It's not like it happened by osmosis, right? It just popped into my lap. And I think that sort of like attitude is only going to continue making people, especially like Latinos, feel like we can't own these like leadership positions. And I'm here to say, like, own it, and don't be shocked that it happens, because we all work hard and we deserve to have these opportunities happen for us, period.
Yeah. I'm gonna hop up just real quickly here, because that reminded me of something. Like, I was telling them also, like, and also like call whenever this kind of reactions happen, because for me, again, it happens a lot. Like, people come and they have like this kind of passive aggressive way of saying like, oh, you did that? You directed that? Wow, that's so amazing. I didn't expect it. And it's like, why are you saying this? Like, is this supposed to be like your way of saying that you were expecting what? Like, shitty things to come from me? Or why are you saying that you didn't expect it? And then, and if you say it on a really nice tone, people usually kind of reflect and say like, I didn't understand I was saying it that way, but I hear you. And I think it's also part of the conversation to keep on educating people in a way and saying like, yeah, I can do this even though I'm a female, I'm a Latino, and this is completely out of your box mind set, but we're able to do whatever we want, even if that surprises you.
Yeah, and I think one thing that we were talking about upstairs is what you mentioned about, if they look down upon you, or if they passively aggressively just like don't put importance to you, like going through and just being consistent and then surprising them at the end and being like, hey, I made it, like no contaban con mi astucia type of way. And I think it's that, because this industry, it's a lot, like it's a long run, like it's a lot about consistency, and so it's like about ignoring those voices and really like trusting yourself and being like, I know what I'm capable of, and if maybe I don't know everything, but I'm in that path of learning, and I know I'll be capable of learning or getting that way, and just like tunnel vision, like keep going, and then surprising people at the end of the road.
Yeah, no, adding on to that too, I think because we're like female filmmakers, like Latino filmmakers, it's like, I feel like sometimes I feel the need to like push against it, like out of spite, like, oh, you're gonna not give me opportunities, I'm gonna work even harder. But sometimes that like does more damage than good, because you're kind of like hurting yourself in a way, because you're fighting for, people, like fighting for the satisfaction from a group of people who never like wanted to welcome you into that space to begin with. So I think I agree, like sometimes taking that path of like, oh, okay, I'm gonna work my own thing, because not everyone needs to see your path. I think there's also, especially with social media now, like I know this is something that I personally deal with, like constantly comparing myself to other people who are like my age and like more successful, or even like 12 years old, and they have like a million rewards. But yeah, I think because of social media, we're pressured to like, okay, I need to show all my achievements, but then that also does more harm than good sometimes. So I think allowing yourself to take that time to really like nourish your creativity, and if you take that time and still find yourself at a dead end, that's when you create those opportunities for yourself. That's when you take the initiative. Okay, I can't find these opportunities, I'm gonna start it, because then that you, again, back to that what I mentioned earlier, it's like once you know the type of stories, your intentions, people will come to you because they have the same values as you, and that built that just from that like little seed of an idea, you have like you when you nourish it, you just surround yourself with like-minded people, and it's that pushes that progress. If you can't find it, if no matter how dig you deep, you can always create it.
Yeah, and I think that now go ahead. And I think that now more than ever, I mean, right now you have your cell phone, and it will probably look better than with some expensive cameras. And that's the whole point of what we do, like storytelling. That's our business. And before, 20 years ago or so, that was impossible. Like either you had the money to buy film, which was crazy expensive, and every roll lasted, depending on the format, but let's say 16 millimeters, that would be 11 minutes. And if you're trying to make a feature, then that's a lot of film. And either you had the money or knew someone with money. And if not, then you could probably just draw it. And now it's a completely different story. So in that sense, I think that with a completely different context, but it also speaks about how things change, and how things that were thought impossible are now a completely different reality. And hopefully we'll get there with the humane conversation, with the community conversation, with art being a path for society to show the way, to mirror the world, So with that on mind, what are you guys now working on? What's next?
I mentioned it earlier, but just the 2 feature documentaries for Maestra, a lovely rom-com that's going to be shown in New York this summer, and there might be a directing gig somewhere in there, but I cannot disclose at this moment.
For me, it's been a lot of writing, a lot of. I've been trying to, the filmmaking journey is a lot about, waiting for things to come your way or waiting for that fund to say yes. But as you said, like sometimes when those yeses don't come, it's about like opening the doors ourselves. So I've been concentrating or trying to do like staying creative and keep, writing down ideas, creating ideas, collaborating, meeting people, and just growing as a artist in all the senses of the word. For example, even though I'm a director, I started taking acting classes. So I'm just trying to, explore all of art and just with that growing even more as a director. And so, and I think further along, I've only done short films, but I feel a feature coming, like writing features, and I'm sort of trying to head towards that direction.
Yeah, and for me, like I mentioned, similar to the short film that you all watched, I'm making another short film with my little sisters this summer. We currently opened like crowdfunding for it. I really want the intention behind this short film to be something, family friendly and also accessible to the community. Because, with crowdfunding, you're getting those donations. And so I want it to be something to give back to my supporters through free. I think it's very important to not only create art, but also make your art accessible, by having like free educational screenings through schools, or, making it like putting on your like films like subtitles and captions so it's accessible to those who have like disabilities. I really want to push making my art more accessible. Like I said, having giving back and, by making art. And then since I will be a senior in the fall, I'm currently writing for my senior thesis. So I'm very excited about that. And it's very exciting to hear about your projects as well.
We can do the Q&A.
Great. Should we pass the mic or? Okay, so here, several hands.
So I'm curious, with all of you having intersectionally marginalized identities, being women, Latina, some of you are immigrants, and with all of those layers of oppression, how do you all stay positive in navigating a space that is slighted towards white men especially, and what strategies do you have for like breaking out of those boxes with you all having those identities?
For me, it has been the way I try to keep myself sane in this crazy industry is finding people that I can really connect with and just share my ideas. And I think people has been my the way I not go crazy. And it's people that I can talk to anything about or talk creatively about. And the way I've tried to go through this predominantly white male industry has been, I'm lucky enough to be living in Los Angeles, where there's a lot of events happening, or there's a lot of, people that you might find. So I just try to keep myself active. I try to, go to events and genuinely try to connect with people and genuinely try to build a relationship, and that often translates into keeping inspired, keeping myself in that artist mind, in that artist mindset. And overall, it's been just pushing through, and ignoring ignoring sometimes statistics, because you can go crazy with, oh my God, there's no possibility, like statistically there's not a lot of women or not a lot of. I try to almost like ignore that and just focus on what I have to do and what I want to do, and just do everything like from the heart. Yeah, those are the way I do it.
Something that I feel is a through line in this panel as well is that we all went to film school and like we all got an education in filmmaking. And for me, like definitely the communities at UCLA and USC have been super helpful, particularly with USC because that's where I got my master's in. And being able to reach out to people, like, I mean, yeah, like you're absolutely right. Like I could sit there and like watch or read all the Hollywood Reporter articles about like Latino movies or like, you know, not doing well or like blah, blah, blah. And like seeing like the reviews for like films that are made by Latino filmmakers. I just ignored that. And instead I call up a friend and I say, what are you doing today to like be positive? And sometimes it's like, I'm going to go see this movie at the AMC in Century City. And I'm like, great, I'll meet you there. Like, it's always like, for me, it always comes back to why did I love filmmaking? Why do I love filmmaking? And always either watching something, working on a script of mine, reading books about movies, like just always remembering like why I got started and why I continue to love it even when it does get tough.
No, like same thing with me. I think it's like, especially with being like in, as you said, like we all come from film school. It's like you're kind of schooled to like, oh, like the business side of film. But I guess the way that I like navigate through this industry, knowing that, you know, it is like to this day very much dominated by like white men. I feel like I've kind of like decentered myself from like wanting to satisfy like people who are not my target audience. You know, I think that's the thing too, is that like creators creators, like we feel the need, oh yeah, I want to make something, and we mentioned this as well, I want to make something that, you know, satisfies everyone, that everyone loves. But that's impossible, you know? But like we said, like when you have a target audience, the people who get your story will get your story. You shouldn't have to explain why you're a filmmaker, oh, why I'm here, you know? When you have people who support you and who see you for you, like that is your reminder that you are here for a reason. You should never have to create things to satisfy people who don't understand, because again, the people who get it will get it, and you'll never have to explain yourself because they'll see you for you. So I think I guess it's easier said than done, but like not caring about what people think, you know, or faking it till you make it, it kind of does help you a lot. Obviously I'm still like learning, there's still so much that I have to learn. It's very inspirational to hear like the stories of these other like Latina filmmakers, but you know, it's possible, you know, if you just focus on creating, knowing your stories, and you know, your supporters will always see you.
I took out the word aspiring from my vocabulary because at one point I used to say I was an aspiring director or an aspiring producer, but I'm like, no, like you can say that you're a producer and you can say that you're a director. And I think that is, for me, like to your point about faking it till you make it, like sometimes you just have to own it and like say it, because that'll get the ball rolling in and of itself when you say, I am this thing and I will do this thing.
Hello. So my question was, as filmmakers, I'm pretty sure everyone can understand that it is a very tiring thing, right? Tons of hours on the screen, tons of hours writing, and things of that nature, right? The question is, what is the main motivational thing that not only motivates you guys to finish the project that you're working on, but also to continue more, and beyond that?
Yeah, I think, I know we mentioned the word like consistency is like, this, like for example, using myself, like I am mainly a screenwriter. And sometimes I do experience burnout, you know, because with school and other things, and, you know, it takes away time from my writing, and, you know, I do get frustrated. But I think when you know, are working consistently, instead of seeing your work as like, oh, this big thing that needs to be tackled, like giving yourself that time to like take care of yourself too. I think that's another thing as creatives is like we feel the need, oh, we need to be creating all the time like machines. And I think, you know, social media has kind of like pushed us to think that way. But it's like you should create for you. So, and like taking that time to, okay, let's say that you're working on like a 30-page script, or you're working on like a feature script, instead of seeing it as this big thing, okay, I'm gonna do 1 page a day. And then seeing that progress, like personally for me, that's what motivates me. Because, you know, if you write 1 page a day, by the end of the month, you have like 31 pages. Like that's a lot, you know? So doing that, and also like taking care of yourself, like sometimes even like taking a break from your work, or having other creative people, like other filmmakers, like I'm looking for an editor, and then you like find one online, or like, hey, I'm a screenwriter, I really want to get notes on this, and then having another screenwriter, you know, I feel like building that connection with someone who understands like the work and your ideas, I feel like that's also motivational for me, at least, you know.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I was gonna say, oh, I lost my train of thought, but yes, like having, I would say, a life outside of just filmmaking. And sometimes it sounds easy, but sometimes we forget, and we just want to do, you know, create, and, you know, pressure ourselves. And since we're in Chicago, I'll use a building metaphor. You know how the Sears Tower, you know, the reason why it can be so tall is because there's smaller supporting towers around it. So even though your career, filmmaking, might be that main tower, you still need, whether it's family, whether it's, you know, spirituality or nature, exercise, you have to build your life around. So you are, in a sense, like, so that way writing becomes easier. So that way you're more likely to feel inspired or write that next word, or feel motivated to keep writing. So that's how I find myself. And also by having a life outside of filmmaking, you know, in that life is where you find stories, is where you might find people that you write about. So that's why it's so important to have all of these aspects being the building blocks of your daily routine.
I always think about how what I was fortunate with at USC is that you're constantly working on either your own projects or other people's projects. I mean, it's just like you're going from like one set to another. And so sometimes when I find that, oh, I'm getting a little tired, or, you know, oh, I feel like I need to take a break, like I always remind myself, like, this is what you've accomplished so far, right? Like, you have a track record of doing things and finishing them. And sometimes, like, it's even like that thought alone that reminds me, like, I can definitely finish like this short film script or this script, or I can finish, you know, this long archival research process, like things like that. You know, just looking at myself as a case study almost of like, I can do this and I can finish them too.
I'll just jump in really quickly, because I would like to add that for me at least, I believe that art in any form, it builds us as persons. In Spanish, you would say persona, and persona actually comes from personaje, character, and that comes from theater, Greek, with the Greeks back in the day. And that's what we're doing with art. That's what we're doing with film. We're creating people. We're building people. We're building ourselves as personas. And that's what moves me forward for sure.
First of all, thank you all for your time and everything you've all been saying. And I guess this is a little bit of a shameless plug, but I just recently got done writing my first 2 scripts ever, one short, one feature. And funny enough, the feature is quite literally titled No Sabo. So, you know, just my Mexican-American experiences are the forefront of the stories that I'm sharing. And my mentor gave me a ridiculously large number for a minimum amount of money I should have to shoot a film here in Chicago. So with that, I'm asking what suggestions you have for setting yourself apart for pitching to investors or grant applications to garner the money?
For me, it's almost like when you're applying to college and they have the personal statement section. To me, it always comes back to like, why are you the person to tell this story and why now? I feel like if you don't nail that question, then like everything else can sort of like be dismissed, right? Because when you're pitching in these rooms, like what people are going to remember is like, what's that like interesting anecdote that person had about, you know, this, why they should be directing a rom-com and all that stuff. I think that's how you set yourself apart, is who you are and like why that script. Like if it's a script that like 10 people can direct, then you're not the person to do it. You have to be able to own the fact that you are the only person that can do that film, period. And I think that's what's going to help definitely in the long run.
I couldn't have said it better. I think you nailed it.
We're gonna do one more question, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for all your amazing contributions to film. I just wanted to ask, I'm currently writing a thesis project on representation, Latino representation in media, and I know earlier on in the conversation there was mention on how Latinos are put into a box. So there's a lot of present stereotypes in Hollywood. How, as Latino filmmakers, do we avoid creating characters that fall under these stereotypes as well?
Go ahead. I think to the risk of losing the job, of course, that comes with a lot of privilege of if you have the money to sustain yourself or not. But given the chance, and if you have that background, like go away from projects that don't align with the way you understand the world, that don't align, that go into a system that has kept on telling us who we are, even though they don't know us. And on a broader conversation, I would say, like, keep on talking about who you are in essence, not in the box that they put you. Like, what are those subjects that you care about, and how do you portray them, and how do you build this character that speaks like you or someone you know or someone you hope you knew. And that just makes us human, and that just makes us way wider than the box that they keep on wanting to put us on. Again, it's a big system. It has been here for ages. Going against it, it's quite hard. But if you have the chance, go the other way. And if not, just be part of the room, because I think that's also important. Like, you cannot walk away from every conversation that doesn't align with what you're thinking, because that's no way to make a dialogue and change other people's minds as well, or even have your own mind change. But fight every time you have towards something that you believe on, and I think that's why we're here, basically.
Yeah, and I would say a lot about self-reflecting, I would say, because I've been guilty of almost falling into that boxes, or putting myself into those boxes. So it's just be conscious of what voice inside you is voices that might come from other places, and what is truly your voice. So differentiate those two, and really always be in the lookout of who you are, and who the voice inside you is telling you to be, instead of trying to become that voice that wants you to be something else. So self-reflection.
I echo what you both said. That was really great.
I also echo.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Gracias
Thank
a
you
todos.
all so much.
Thank you
It was
all.
super wonderful.
Appreciate you.